In a small, quiet town in Japan, there lived a 17-year-old boy who was different from the others. While most teenagers were busy with school clubs, sports, or hanging out with friends, he spent his free time in a tiny room at the back of his house. That room was cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and had nothing fancy, just an old upright piano that had once belonged to his grandmother. The piano was scratched, a few keys stuck sometimes, and the sound wasn't perfect. But to him, it was more precious than gold. He wasn't the kind of boy who liked talking much. At school, he stayed quiet. He didn't joke around or join games during lunch breaks. Many students called him strange or boring, even laughed at him because he didn't care about trends, clothes, or popularity. But he didn't care. He had a secret world one that lived in the black and white keys of his grandmother's piano. He started learning piano when he was around 7 years old, just by watching videos online. His family couldn't afford music lessons, so he taught himself. He'd replay videos over and over, listening carefully, copying hand movements, and writing down notes by hand. There were no music, books, or personal tutors, just pure patience and love. One day, when he was about 10, he found a recording of a piano piece that changed everything. It was Chopin's heroic Polonaise. We didn't even know who Chopin. It was back then, but the moment he heard it, his heart raced. The way the notes rose and fell, the power in the rhythm, the emotions packed into every second, it felt like the music was speaking to him directly. From that moment on, he made a promise to himself. One day, I will play this piece just like that. But it wasn't easy. His fingers were small. The Polonaise was fast and difficult. Many people told him it was too hard, especially for someone without a teacher. And some even said, "Don't waste your time. You need training for that." But he didn't listen. He practiced every single day, sometimes for hours. Even when his fingers ached, or when he got sleepy doing homework late at night, he still found time for the piano. His parents loved him, but they worried too. His father often said, "Music is a beautiful dream, but don't forget reality." His mother would sometimes peek into his room and quietly sigh. They saw his passion, but they were afraid he'd get hurt chasing something so uncertain. Still, they never stopped him. Winter was the hardest. Their old house had weak heating, and sometimes the piano room would be freezing. But he kept playing wearing gloves until his hands warmed up, drinking hot tea, and sometimes practicing in the dark when electricity was low to him. The piano wasn't just an instrument, it was his friend. It was the only place he felt truly alive and understood. At school, he rarely spoke about it. No one really knew what he did after class. They only saw a quiet boy who walked home alone. But if anyone had peeked into that little room at night, they would have seen something magically, young boy pouring his heart into the keys, playing not just with skill, but with soul. And even though no one clapped for him, even though no spotlight shone on him, he kept playing. Because deep down, he believed that someday, the world would hear him too. Every evening after school, while the world outside moved on, the boy returned to the same small room, placed his fingers on the old piano, keys, and began again. Over and over, the same notes. His goal wasn't to be perfect. It was to feel the music the way he heard it in his heart. But the world around him didn't always understand. At school, no one talked about classical music. Most of the other students liked pop songs or played guitar in school bands. Some of them teased him, calling him old-fashioned or boring. One day in music class, a classmate found out that he was trying to learn Chopin. The boy laughed loudly and said, "You? Chop it. That's too hard even for trained players. Stop dreaming." Those words hurt. But he didn't show it. He stayed quiet and smiled politely like he always did. He had heard similar things before, even from some adults, but deep inside, he refused to give up. When others went out to play or watch movies, he went home to practice. It became his daily routine. Homework, dinner, then hours at the piano. His room wasn't soundproof, and sometimes his neighbors complained about the music. His parents told him to keep it low, so he adjusted. Played softly, often using just one hand to work through difficult passages. The room may have been small, but to him, it felt like the center of the universe. One winter evening, he sat in front of the piano in his gloves, trying to master the fast runs in the middle part of the heroic Polonaise. His fingers were stiff from the cold, and a few keys were still sticking. But he refused to stop. Again and again, he played the same part, failing, restarting, adjusting his touch. His hands hurt, but his eyes stayed focused. His mother entered quietly, holding a warm drink. She didn't say anything, just placed the cup beside him. He looked up and gave her a small smile. She smiled back, a little worried, a little proud. She didn't understand the music, but she understood her son's heart. On weekends, while other teens slept in, he woke up early, wore headphones, and listened to recordings of great pianists. Not just once, but many times, he paid attention to how they moved their fingers, when they pressed harder or softer, when they paused or sped up. Every sound taught him something new. He didn't have expensive tools, but he made use of everything he had. A mirror helped him see his hand positions. A phone camera helped him record and watch himself. He even marked parts of the keyboard with tiny stickers to train muscle memory. Some days he felt stuck. Some days, no matter how hard he tried, the piece didn't sound right. On those days, he wanted to cry. But instead of quitting, he would sit quietly, take a deep breath, and try again. He believed that real music came from pain and joy, from the heart, not just from perfect fingers. He had no stage, no teacher, and no applause. But he had a dream, and that dream kept him going. No one knew the amount of work he was putting in. No one saw the nights he stayed up, correcting his mistakes. People only saw a quiet boy walking to and from school, always looking down, always alone, but inside. Something powerful was building, because he wasn't just learning to play Chopin's heroic Polonaise, he was becoming it. One morning, walking home from the grocery store with his mother, the boy noticed a small poster stuck to a telephone pole. It was faded and torn at the corners, but one line caught his eye. National Youth Piano Competition, free public audition. Open to all. His heart skipped a beat. He stopped walking and kept staring at the poster. His mother looked at him and said, "You want to try?" He didn't answer right away. The words on the poster sounded exciting, but scary too. This wasn't just playing alone in his room. This was performing in front of real judges, people who knew music inside and out. Still, the idea didn't leave his mind. That night he sat by the piano but didn't play. He just looked at the keys and asked himself quietly, "Am I ready for this?" For a few days, he kept going back to look at the poster. The audition was happening in a nearby town, only a train ride away. No fee, no fancy forms, just show up and play. His parents didn't push him, but they left the decision to him. One evening, without saying much, he printed out the music sheet. For Chopin's heroic Polonaise, clean, fresh, with no notes or scribbles. He folded it carefully and placed it in his school bag. The next morning, he told his parents, "I'll try." The day of the audition came quickly. He wore his cleanest shirt and pants, though they were simple. He had no suit or dress shoes like other kids he would soon meet. He carried nothing but his music sheet and a bottle of water. His father gave him some train money and patted him on the shoulder. His mother walked him to the station and waved. As the train pulled away, he had never traveled alone like this before. When he reached the audition hall, he was surprised. There were many teenagers there, some around his age, others older. Most of them had proper music bags, sheet holders, and even small warming-up keyboards. Some had parents with them, giving last-minute advice. They looked confident, comfortable, and experienced. He sat quietly in the corner, holding his folded sheet. He didn't speak to anyone. He just watched. One by one, the names were called. The sound of piano music filled the hall as each student took turns performing. Some played beautifully, as others made mistakes. The judges listened carefully, taking notes. The boy's heart beat faster every time someone played. His hands were cold. His stomach felt tight. Then finally they called his number. He stood up slowly, legs shaking just a little, and walked toward the stage. The grand piano was beautiful, shiny, smooth, and twice the size of his own. He bowed politely, sat down, and placed the sheet music in front of him. Then, after one deep breath, he began. At first, His fingers were stiff. The sound was not as strong as he wanted. But then something happened. He closed his eyes for a moment and remembered how it felt back home, just him and the music. Slowly, the sound changed. It grew louder, richer, more alive. The notes of the heroic Polonaise filled the hall. His hands flew over the keys with emotion, not perfection. He didn't care if he missed a few notes. He just wanted the judges to feel the heart behind every movement. And they did. When he finished, there was silence for a moment. Then a few soft claps. One of the judges leaned forward and whispered something to the others. The boy stood up, bowed again, and walked off the stage quietly. He didn't know what they thought, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he had been heard. 2 weeks passed after the audition. The boy didn't say much about it at home. His parents didn't ask too many questions either. Life went back to normal: school, piano, quiet, meals. He didn't think he would be chosen. There were so many good players that day. He thought maybe the judges forgot him already. But one evening, while folding clothes in his room, his mother came running in, holding a letter in her hand. Her face was full of surprise and something close to joy. "It came," she said, breathless. He stood up and carefully opened the envelope. It was from the organizers of the National Youth Competition. His eyes scanned the page slowly, not believing what he was reading. Then he looked up and said quietly, "I got in." His parents stared at him for a few seconds. Then they smiled. Not loudly, not with cheering, but with deep pride. He had been selected to perform in Tokyo in the junior finalist round of the competition. It would be a public performance, with judges, cameras, and even a small audience. The winners from this round would move to the finals, where big names in the music world would be watching. It felt like a dream, but now came the hard part. Tokyo was big, loud, full of talented musicians. He'd never been there before, and just the thought of it made him nervous. But he didn't have much time to think. The performance was only a month away. He started practicing harder than ever. His fingers were sore. His back ached from long hours at the piano, but he didn't stop. Wanted his Polonaise to speak louder this time. Every note had to be honest, full of feeling. When the day came to leave for Tokyo, his parents gave him quiet hugs. His mother packed some rice balls and warm clothes. His father handed him a small coin and old family good luck charm. The train ride to Tokyo felt long. He stared out the window, watching the towns and fields pass by. The closer he got to the city, the more his heart raced. What if he made a mistake? What if he froze on stage? What if they laughed? When he arrived at the concert hall, he felt even smaller than he expected. The building was huge. The stage was even bigger. The other players were dressed neatly, walking confidently with their parents and teachers. Some even had personal assistants and music trainers beside them. He stood quietly in the corner, wearing a clean but simple shirt. No one noticed him. No one talked to him. It didn't bother him too much. He wasn't there to make friends. Backstage, he waited for his turn. He could hear others playing fast, powerful, perfect. Their hands moved with years of training. He closed his eyes and tried to stay calm. He took out his music sheet one last time, looked at the familiar notes, and whispered to himself, "Don't play to impress. Just play what you feel." When his number was called, he walked slowly onto the stage. Bright lights shone down. The audience was silent. The grand piano waited. He sat down. His heart was pounding, but as soon as his fingers touched the keys, everything else disappeared. No city, no noise, no fear, just the music. And that's when he started to play. Chopin's heroic Polonaise, not like a boy trying to win a competition, but like someone telling a story from the bottom of his heart. The moment he touched the keys, his hands stopped shaking. The lights above him were hot. The stage felt huge. His heart was still beating fast, but something inside him became calm. It was like the piano was calling him home. He had played Chopin's heroic Polonaise hundreds of times in his small, cold room, but this time was different. He began to play. The first notes were strong, full of power. His fingers moved with confidence, not because he wanted to show off, but because he had lived with this piece for so long. Every sound meant something to him. Every pause, every rise in tempo, every sudden silence, he had practiced not just the music, but the emotion behind it. He forgot the judges. He forgot the crowd. He forgot he was in Tokyo. In his mind, he was back in his room, sitting by the old, upright piano, feeling the cold air on his face, remembering the nights when no one believed in him. This piece was no longer just a song, it was his story. The judges sat still, watching. One of them leaned slightly forward. Another quietly put down their pen. There was something in the way the boy played, something raw, something honest. As the piece continued, the music became faster, more intense. His hands danced across the keys, hitting each note like it was a part of his soul. His body moved with the rhythm, not dramatically, but naturally, like the music was flowing through him. People in the audience sat up straight. Some whispered softly to each other. No one expected this level of emotion from a boy with no formal training. Then came the middle part of the Polonaise, the hardest section. Fast finger runs, strong chords, sudden changes. Many pianists struggle here, even with years of practice. But he didn't stop, didn't panic. He closed his eyes and remembered his hardest nights, the ones where he wanted to give up, where his hands were frozen from the cold, the ones where no one clapped for him, and he played through the storm. The last part of the piece arrived, powerful and bold. It sounded like a victory march, like the music itself was standing tall after a long battle. The notes flew from the piano like fire. Then suddenly, silence, he finished. The final key rang through the hall and faded slowly. He lifted his hands, placed them gently on his lap, and bowed. There was no sound for a second. Then someone in the audience began to clap. It started softly, then louder. Soon, the entire hall was filled with applause. He looked up, surprised. People were smiling. Some were even standing. One of the judges had a small tear in their eye. It wasn't just a good performance, it was something more, something real. He walked off the stage quietly. No big smile, no loud celebration. Just a calm feeling in his chest. Backstage, he sat down on a bench and took a deep breath. His palms were sweaty and his heart was still racing, but he felt peaceful. He didn't know if he would win or not. He didn't care at that moment, because he had done what he came to do. He had played the heroic Polonaise from the deepest part of his soul, and for the first time in his life, a whole room of strangers felt it. After the performance, the boy sat quietly backstage. The sounds of clapping still echoed in his ears. He didn't know what had just happened, but it felt like a dream. He had poured everything into the music. Now it was over, and he wasn't sure what to expect next. He didn't talk to anyone, simply took out a small cloth and cleaned his hands, just like he did at home. A few performers passed by, talking about the judges, their scores, and what they could have done better, but he stayed silent. He had no teacher to ask him how it went, no classmates to cheer for him. Still, he felt something inside, something warm. It wasn't pride. It was peace. The next morning, he checked his phone. A message had arrived from the competition team. He opened it slowly. His eyes scanned the words. He had been selected for the finals. His fingers trembled slightly as he held the phone. His parents sitting across from him at the small kitchen table noticed his expression. "You got in?" his mother asked softly. He nodded. There was no shouting or jumping, just a quiet moment between a family that had seen many silent struggles. His father gave him a gentle nod. His mother smiled, with eyes full of emotion. Even though they didn't fully understand the world of music, they understood what this meant to their son. That same afternoon, someone sent him a link. It was a video someone from the audience had recorded his performance and uploaded it online. At first, he didn't want to watch. He didn't like seeing himself. But curiosity won, and he clicked the video as he watched. He saw himself on stage, small, nervous, but full of emotion. The video wasn't perfect, but the sound captured something real. The way he moved, the way the notes filled the hall, it all looked so different from what he had imagined. The comments below the video surprised him even more. Strangers from different places were leaving messages like, "This moved me to tears. I don't know much about classical music, but this felt powerful." Who is this boy? He refreshed the page an hour later. The views were going up fast. He couldn't believe it. The next day, a local news channel contacted him for a small interview. Then, a bigger music page shared his video. One person even called him the boy with Chopin in his heart. Didn't let it change him. Fame didn't make him louder or more confident. He still walked the same way, still wore simple clothes, still practiced on the old upright piano in his cold little room. But something had changed around him at school. A few classmates started talking to him. One of the teachers mentioned his performance during morning announcements. Even the principal called him into the office not for trouble, but to say well done. For the first time, he felt seen. One evening, he received a letter from a music academy. It was an offer for a full scholarship to train under real teachers, ones who had performed all over the world. They said they saw not just talent, but heart. They wanted to help him grow. He stared at the letter for a long time. He never thought his music would take him this far. All he had was an old piano, dream and quiet determination. Now, doors were opening, but deep inside, still felt like the same boy, the one who played not to impress others, but to speak when words failed, and in a world full of noise. His music had finally been heard, even after the scholarship offer. And all the attention, the boy stayed the same. He still woke up early. He still practiced every evening. He still took the same small train to school. Fame had found him, but it didn't change his heart. He didn't want to become famous for being famous. He wanted to keep playing music that touched people's hearts just like it had touched his own when he first heard Chopin. The day of the national finals arrived. This time, the hall was even bigger. There were more lights, more cameras, more people. Famous musicians were seated among the judges. The audience was full of professionals, teachers, and music lovers from all over the country. It was a big deal. But the boy didn't feel nervous this time. He stood backstage in his plain clothes, holding his music sheet quietly around him. Others were chatting, warming up, checking their clothes in the mirror. He didn't have anyone fixing his collar or giving last-minute advice. He didn't need it. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When his turn came, he stepped onto the stage calmly. He walked toward the grand piano like it was an old friend. The room fell silent. He didn't look at the audience, didn't look at the judges. He simply sat down, placed his hands on the keys, and let the music begin. Once again, he played Chopin's heroic Polonaise. But this time, something was different. The sound was fuller. The emotion was deeper. There was something in the way he played that reached beyond the notes. It was like the music carried all the silent years, all the lonely nights, all the quiet pain and quiet strength he had hidden inside. The room stayed completely silent. No coughs, no movements, just music. When he finished, the hall stayed still for a second. Then the applause began. It wasn't wild or loud, but it was deep and long. The kind of clapping that comes from respect, not just excitement. He bowed, stood up, and walked off the stage with the same quiet steps. He didn't wait for the results to him. This wasn't about winning. It was about reaching people. It was about proving that music didn't need fancy clothes, expensive lessons, or big names. Behind it, all it needed was heart. Later that evening, the results were announced. He didn't win first prize, but he was given something even more meaningful, a special award for emotional excellence in performance. The judges said his music had depth beyond his years, and that he reminded everyone why music is a universal language. After that, more opportunities came. Invitations to perform. Messages from people around the world. Even a letter from a famous pianist who said, "Your Polonaise reminded me why I fell in love with music." But even with all this, the boy stayed true to himself. He went back to his hometown. He visited his old school and gave a short performance for the younger students. He fixed the broken keys on his upright piano, and he often still played alone in his room, just like before. When someone once asked him, "Why do you always choose the same piece?" he smiled and said, "Because it saved me." Years later, people still talked about the boy who played Chopin like it was a heartbeat, not just with skill but with soul. And even if the world forgets his name someday, those who heard him play will always remember how it felt, because sometimes a quiet boy from a small town can say more through a piano than words ever could.